Good morning, I'm Craig DeGrelli. It's Monday, November 18th, 2024, and these are your Unbiased Updates. With the American election now over, the war between Russia and Ukraine is intensifying, the weekend attacks, and what the Biden administration is doing on the way out the door. And back at MSG, Donald Trump returns to New York for a UFC showdown while making more presidential picks, who he is tapping to lead American energy policy, and why it's a victory for supporters of fracking.
From the Straight Arrow News Studio, bringing the stories that matter to you from across the United States and around the world, these are today's Unbiased Updates.
It's been nearly 3 years since Russia invaded Ukraine, and while the U.S. has supported Ukraine since the start, President Joe Biden is now easing limitations on how the United States supplied weapons can be used. U.S. officials say the president has authorized Ukraine to use long-range missiles provided by the U.S. to strike inside Russia, as Russian ally North Korea has deployed thousands of troops to the Kursk region. The policy shift comes as President Biden's time in office winds down, and President-elect Donald Trump has vowed to limit U.S. support for Ukraine. In addition, President-elect Trump has promised to quickly put an end to the war with Russia, but has yet to say how. The decision comes as Russia unleashed a barrage of its own missiles in Ukraine on Sunday. Ukrainian authorities say 10 people, including 2 children, were killed and dozens injured as a result of the Russian strike on a residential building in Sumy, near the Russian border. Earlier in the day, Russia launched its largest attack against Ukraine since August, once again targeting power plants and energy infrastructure across the country. Ukrainian authorities say at least 5 people were killed in those strikes. On the social site Telegram, Ukrainian President Zelensky said about 120 missiles and 90 drones were fired into the country, with Ukrainian air defenses downing more than 140 targets. In the Middle East, an Israeli strike on a neighborhood in Beirut killed Hezbollah's top spokesman, according to the militant group. Mohammed Afif was an advisor to the late Hezbollah chief Hassan Nasrallah, whom Israel killed in an attack on Beirut in September. Afif had been responsible for Hezbollah's media relations since 2014. Lebanon's health ministry says no evacuation warning was issued before the strike, which happened in the middle of the day, and 4 people were killed. The Israel Defense Forces says it carried out, quote, a precise intelligence-based strike that eliminated Afif, who they called the chief propagandist and spokesperson of the Hezbollah terrorist organization. Here in the United States, over the weekend, President-elect Donald Trump returned to Madison Square Garden to see the Ultimate Fighting Championships pay-per-view event. It was the first time Trump was back at the New York City venue since his rally last month, and he received a roaring applause from the UFC crowd on Saturday night, including hearing chants of USA, USA. Trump was joined by his friend and UFC President Dana White, as well as some of the names he recently picked to join his administration, including Elon Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy, Robert F. Kennedy, and Tulsi Gabbard. House Speaker Mike Johnson and Trump's oldest sons, Donald Trump Jr. and Eric Trump, were also in attendance. The president-elect also shook hands with Joe Rogan, one of the commentators for the event. Trump was a guest on Rogan's podcast in the days leading up to the election. Trump's weekend also involved filling more key positions in his administration, including nominating Chris Wright, the chief executive of Liberty Energy, a Denver-based fracking company, to lead the Department of Energy, and picking current FCC Commissioner Brendan Carr to be the agency's chairman. Carr recently made headlines after claiming Vice President Kamala Harris's appearance on Saturday Night Live violated FCC rules. More nominations from the president-elect are expected to come this week. President Joe Biden made history Sunday, becoming the first sitting president to visit the Amazon rainforest. While there, Biden met indigenous leaders and visited a museum at the gateway to the Amazon. He also toured the drought-shrunken waters of the Amazon River's greatest tributary and signed a U.S. proclamation designating November 17th International Conservation Day, highlighting his commitment to the preservation of the region. He also touched on concerns the incoming Trump administration might change U.S. climate policy.
It's no secret that I'm leaving office in January. I will leave my successor and my country in a strong foundation to build on if they choose to do so.
That was the most that Biden publicly referenced Donald Trump during his South American tour. The transition was briefly mentioned during Chinese President Xi Jinping's remarks on Saturday during his final meeting with Biden. While he also did not mention Trump by name, Xi appeared to signal his concern over what the new administration could mean for China's relationship with the U.S. During his campaign, Donald Trump promised to levy 60% tariffs on Chinese imports. Warner Brothers Discovery is back in the game when it comes to the NBA. Though the company will no longer be airing games on its TNT network after the season, the Wall Street Journal and other outlets report the two sides have come to an agreement to keep NBA programming in the Warner Brothers family. The reports say the new deal will settle Warner Brothers Discovery's breach of contract lawsuit filed against the league after the NBA signed rights deals with Disney's ESPN, Comcast NBC, and Amazon. The 11-year agreement will see NBA content remain on Warner Brothers Discovery's digital platforms, Bleacher Report and House of Highlights. It also gives Warner Brothers Discovery the right to distribute games overseas in places such as Northern Europe and parts of Latin America, excluding Mexico and Brazil. Reports say Warner Brothers Discovery also struck a deal with Disney to license its popular TNT show Inside the NBA, featuring former players turned commentators Shaquille O'Neal and Charles Barkley starting next season. The show will air throughout the season on ABC and ESPN. The deals are expected to be officially announced this week. Finally this morning, we'll end with a question. Did you watch the big fight on Netflix on Friday night? If you did, it turns out you were not alone. You had a lot of company. Netflix says 60 million households tuned in live to watch the boxing match between former heavyweight champ Mike Tyson and YouTube sensation turned boxer Jake Paul. The fight peaked at, get this, 65 million concurrent streams. After 8 rounds, the 27-year-old Paul defeated the 58-year-old Tyson in a unanimous decision. Netflix also says 50 million households watched the co-main event that saw Katie Taylor retain her championship against Amanda Serrano, which the streaming giant says would make it the most watched professional women's sporting event in United States history. Netflix says more information like total viewers will be released later this week. And despite viewer complaints of issues such as buffering, all these numbers bode well for the streaming service. Their future live sporting events include NFL games on Christmas Day and WWE weekly programming starting next year. I guess you could say for Netflix that fight was a knockout. Those are your unbiased updates for Monday. We'll see you back here tomorrow. For all of us here at Straight Arrow News, I'm Craig DeGrelli. Have a great day.